Public Facilities Commission. Before us today is the Boston Department of Transportation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Beginning with our order of business today, we do have the Boston Transportation Department with us. Joining us today is the Acting Commissioner, Greg Rooney, for BTD, and also Brian Valancourt. He's the manager for the Planning and Permitting Department of AECom. Before I read out vote number one, which concerns an order of taking, I have a disclosure notice, and I have two of these notices for the record. And so if you bear with me, the first disclosure notice concerns Commissioner Irish, and the disclosure notice indicates that he is the Commissioner of the Inspectional Services Department. He is a member of the Public Facilities Commission as well. He happens to be a board member of the Madison Park Development Corporation, where he volunteers his personal time in an uncompensated position. Madison Tropical Market LLC is a subsidiary of the Madison Park Development Corporation. Commissioner Irish has had no involvement with the Madison Tropical Market nor the Madison Park Development Corporation in its interactions with the City of Boston concerning any of the properties identified in the order of taking before us today. No one has discussed or requested his opinion on the order of taking or on any matters concerning the Boston Transportation Department that are before us today. He has no individual, financial, or other interest in any recommendation made by BTD to the Public Facilities Commission. This information is all accurate and true. It's been reviewed by legal counsel for the Commission. Due to the fact that a quorum of commissioners, which is 2 members, is required under the PFC Enabling Act, known as Chapter 642 of the Acts of 1966, Commissioner Irish is present and voting alongside Commissioner Momoli today, as Chair Craven is the only other voting member of the PFC, and she is unable to be with us at the meeting today. The next disclosure that I have concerns Commissioner Momoli. Commissioner Momoli has provided this disclosure notice to the city's legal advisor and to the city's law department, just as Commissioner Irish has done as well. This disclosure notice concerns several of the properties that are listed in the order of taking and are associated with the Boston Planning and Development Agency. Commissioner Momoli is also the Director of Engineering and Facilities Management for the Economic Development Industrial Corp., which is part of the Boston Redevelopment Authority, which does business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, sometimes referred to as BPDA. As the Director of Engineering, he's had no involvement in any of the matters that are before us in the order of taking that concerns any of the properties listed therein. No employee or agent of the City of Boston, nor the Boston Transportation Department, or the EDIC, BRA, or BPDA has requested that Commissioner Momoli vote in any particular way. He has no individual, financial, or other interest in any recommendation made by BTD to the PFC. This information is accurate, true. It's been submitted to the legal advisor, myself, to the city's law department, and to our mayor. Due to the fact that a quorum of commissioners, which is 2 members, is required under the PFC Enabling Act, known as Chapter 642 of the Acts of 1966, Commissioner Momoli is here to vote alongside Commissioner Irish, as Chair Craven is the only other voting member of the PFC and she's unable to be with us today. These disclosures are noted on the record to dispel any perception of a conflict of interest. I will now read forward vote number 1. Vote number 1 is an order of taking, and it regards various property interests located in Roxbury for the Molina Cass Boulevard Reconstruction Project. This concerns both permanent easements and temporary easements. These easements are all fully detailed in the order of taking, which has been publicly posted with the city clerk and is on the city's website and is part of the record for us today. Each of these interests is going to be identified in the vote presentation, and I am going to turn the vote request over to Commissioner Rooney, who is also then going to jointly share in the presentation with Brian Valancourt. If you'd proceed, Commissioner Rooney. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you, Commissioners, for allowing us the opportunity to present to you today. As you know, we're here this morning seeking a vote of approval concerning an order of taking for 4 temporary and 4 permanent easements as part of the Molina Cass Boulevard Reconstruction Project. This project, which has received $25 million in federal and state funding, proposes improvements to multimodal access, safety, and operations for all users of Melnia Cass Boulevard. This is a MassDOT construction contract with an advertising date of August 31st, 2019. Joining me today are Brian Valancourt and Melissa Ryan from AECom, attorney Catherine Klein from KP Law, Patrick Hoey from the Transportation Department's Policy and Planning Division, and Rob Arcangeli from the City of Boston Law Department. In addition to those in attendance, there are numerous partners that have been instrumental in getting us to this point that I'd like to briefly thank. The design team at Howard Stein Hudson, the law firm of Marsh, Moriarty, Ontel, and Golder, appraisal firm Peterson, LaChance, Regan, and Pino, LLC, as well as Evergreen Appraisal, our state partners at the Metropolitan Planning Organization and Massachusetts Department of Transportation, our city partners at the Boston Water and Sewer Commission, Boston Public Schools, Department of Neighborhood Development, Public Works Department, Parks and Recreation, Commission on Persons with Disabilities, Environment Department, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, Boston Planning and Development Agency, and the City of Boston Law Department. Also would like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Melnia Cass Boulevard, United Neighbors of Lower Roxbury, Madison Park Development Corporation, Urbanica Boston, Livable Streets, and the Boston Cyclists Union. And finally, I'd also like to thank current and former elected officials for the Roxbury and South End. At this point, I'll turn it over to Brian to go forward with more detail regarding the current order of taking.
Thank you, Commissioner Rooney. With the Commission's approval, I'd like to present the details of the project. I'll review the overview of it, and then we'll go through a slideshow that illustrates the individual easements. For this current order of taking, the permanent easements are for sidewalk and roadway layout alterations, so that the sidewalk that's either currently used or will be as part of the project can be brought into the city layout and is covered by a permanent easement. The temporary easements are for entryway, some back of sidewalk work, and driveway reconstruction and grading to match the grades of the existing driveways and sidewalks. The term of the temporary easements is 3 years, because that ties with the duration, the planned duration of the construction contract. The project will follow the City of Boston and the MassDOT construction policy, and that is to maintain public-private vehicle entrances to the maximum degree practicable, coordinate with the property owners for any work that's being done on the back of sidewalk or in front of entryways, and schedule that well in advance to minimize any interference or any inconvenience to the individual property owners. And they work to schedule that all well in advance. The overall process for the right-of-way taking follows both the Uniform Act at the federal level and Massachusetts General Law 79. Our entire process is compliant with the law and the regulations governing that. And major components of that is to treat individuals fairly, encourage acquisition by agreement. We actually do have one property owner who's donated an easement. Minimize litigation, and have 3 meaningful contacts with the property owners during the course of the whole right-of-way acquisition process. For each parcel in the easements, we had a state Massachusetts licensed appraiser conduct the appraisal, and then we also had an independent Massachusetts licensed review appraiser review and comment on that. We conducted individual site visits and individual contacts with each of the property owners. Then in mid-July, an offer of just compensation was made, and then the negotiation period for that ended August 13th. All the substantive issues have been addressed. There is one property owner during the slide, we'll go into a little bit more detail, at the trustee of 845 Albany Street. They understand the project, they understand the easements, but they believe they disagree with the amount of compensation being offered for it. And we'll get into the detail of that a little bit more during the slide presentation. So with that, we'll walk through, if the commission would like, the individual easements. So the overall project which consists of a street reconstruction to make it more acceptable to all users, both pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, and vehicles on the street. Extends 0.9 miles from Columbus Avenue in the upper left to Mass Avenue in the right. Northeastern University is a property owner here, and we have 2 easements that are being acquired from them. TE14, which is a temporary easement, that's for back of sidewalk reconstruction work. The SW6 is a permanent easement, and it's 1 foot wide by 184 feet long, so that the sidewalk can be reconstructed to provide a full ADA compliant path. The existing sidewalk is just a foot too narrow, and so we're acquiring this permanent easement of 184 feet so the fully compliant sidewalk can be constructed. And that's very typical of many of the easements throughout the project. This is just another continuation of the northeastern easement. Then on the north side of Melnia Cass, we have 2 easements, SW4 and TE15. SW4 is a sidewalk easement, and this is where a bicycle path will be constructed in the back of sidewalk area. The existing pavement there is quite old and broken, and all this will be reconstructed as part of the project. And then out in the street itself, there will be a separate bike lane and a what's called a buffered bike lane, and then parking will be out here on the street. And the entire street is being reconstructed just to the north and to the south of Melnia Cass here to provide the full streetscape treatment with separated bike lanes and the pedestrian enhancements. And then plantings will also be made in the buffered space between the 2. And then also with Northeastern University, because the public currently crosses the sidewalk here, the sidewalk is actually private property, so we're acquiring the SW5, which is a sidewalk easement, and that will also be brought into the city layout. At Roxy Residence at 1030 to 1070 Tremont Street, once again, it's back of sidewalk reconstruction. That's highlighted in blue on the slide. And likewise on the other side of the corner there. Morgan Memorial Goodwill has the largest private, permanent, and temporary easements. We've met with them multiple times, including just again 2 weeks ago, to coordinate the project and to go over construction staging. They've indicated that they will be accepting compensation for it. The need for the easement is that the roadway will be raised approximately 1 foot to 2 feet in this area, and then in order to enhance the grading and provide a separated bike lane and the sidewalk, we need the permanent easement here, and then a temporary easement behind this to finish the grading and carrying it in to the edge of their parking lot. And this just shows it further down on the Morgan Memorial Goodwill temporary and permanent easement. And that's the last of the private easements. I did mention that at 845 Albany Street, there's a public easement that's being taken, or as a public easement, both a temporary and permanent. The underlying property owner is Boston Water and Sewer, and the tenant at 845, the trust called 845 Albany Street, has a 30-year lease agreement that they entered into the city. They're 15 years through it, and they have a total of 21 parking spaces, of which the project, because Albany Street is being realigned, will take 7 permanent parking spaces and 2 temporary parking spaces will be taken. And we're offering the leaseholder, because of leasehold interest, $48,000 in just compensation for their 15 years of parking loss. That was an amount derived by working with the appraisers and review appraisers to come up with that. The trustee of 845 Albany Street has indicated that they believe the value of those parking spaces are higher, and we've stood with our offer of just compensation. We believe that's fair and reasonable for the 7 permanent parking spaces that will be taken and the 2 temporary parking spaces that will be taken. So with that, we are asking for the Commission's vote today for the order of taking. And then after the vote is taken, we will be recording this at the Registry of Deeds and making the offers, the payments available to the property owners. And then the right-of-way process will be turned over to Mass DOT and FHWA, who've been reviewing this along the way, and then they will certify it at the end.
Well, I think this is a great project. Without dating myself, this was goes back to be the original inner belt that Department of Public Works at the time rebuilt and so forth. And actually, looking at that picture, I was the one who did the site clearance. Don't worry, no conflict. I did that almost 35 years ago. The time limit is run out for the Woodward Memorial site. No, it's a great project. It's time for this road to be rebuilt and so forth. On your parking issue, I think one of the ways to resolve it is tell them they can park at across from 1010, and if they think the value of parking is more than, what do we charge out there now? $5 a day or something like that? So.
May have to revisit that.
I was going to say, Commissioner Irish might.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That's your parking now.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Let's have a couple of questions. One is for temporary easement number 5. What is the impact going to be on the trees?
Temporary easement 5, which is part of the Morgan Memorial Goodwill. The project has been redesigned several times, but unfortunately, many of the trees shown in the pictures here will be having to be cut down in order to accommodate the separation of the bike lane and the pedestrian walkway and the sidewalk. But the total project is planting a net increase of 240 new trees. And they actually went through a redesign process to try to save as many of these large caliber trees as they could, and they have to the degree practicable, but it's a number of trees are going to have to be cut down just to meet the design standards.
Okay, it's good to know there's going to be a net increase, though. And what is the next steps for the 845 Albany Street parking issues? Is that something that's going to go to litigation, or what's the next anticipated steps for that?
Well, the property owner has a 3-year period to which to bring litigation if they so choose. They have to hire their own appraiser and conduct an appraisal and come up with what they believe the value of these parking spaces are. Our appraisal was performed by an experienced Massachusetts licensed appraiser who we've used on numerous City of Boston projects, and it was reviewed by an independent appraiser who's also worked on many City of Boston projects, and they believe the amount derived, the $48,000, is fair and just compensation for the value of the parking spaces. And just referring back to the slide on the screen, these particular trees here will remain. This particular section was redesigned so that these trees in TE5 can remain.
So just to follow up, you're just giving them their pro tanto payment and letting them, if they decide,
Yes.
take any action and so forth. I think once they realize the legal costs will cost them more than any additional money.
And if I may add a note on the legal review for the matter, all property interests, the temporary easements and the permanent easements have been reviewed by myself. I'd like to thank Catherine Klein of KP Law, who has provided sage legal counsel through this entire process. to the Boston Transportation Department and to the right-of-way team. Robert Arcangeli is an assistant corporation counsel with the city's law department, and he and I have discussed the latest correspondence that's come from the trustees of 845 Albany Street Trust. And my counsel to the commission is to proceed forward under Mass General Law, Chapter 79, but the project has been done in full conformance with an eminent domain taking process, and that any disagreements, as Commissioner Mamoli has noted, and as Brian Valancourt has pointed out, any disagreements regarding the sum for a pro tanto payment can be handled by those with a property interest with a certified independent appraisal. The next steps for us on this is, as legal counsel, is to be able to communicate with the attorney who's representing the trustees of 845 Albany Street Trust and be able to move the matter toward a resolution. With that said, I would ask the commissioners to make a motion if there's no further questions and to proceed with the vote.
Just one last question. When, may have missed it, when do we expect them, MassDOT, to go out to bid on this?
August 31st, and they expect the NTP to be issued, notice to proceed to the contractor to be issued in the fall, and hard construction to start in the spring of 2020.
Great job. You make a motion to approve vote number 1?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Vote number 1 is hereby approved. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.